The sky hung low over the city, wrapped in a misty gray that blurred the distant skyline. Adam Driver stood before the rusted gates of the long-abandoned Wexley Conservatory of Music. Vines curled through the iron bars like nature reclaiming forgotten dreams. Cracked stone lions flanked the entrance, once proud, now worn and chipped with time. The building had been closed for decades, its name barely visible on the weather-worn arch above. He was there not as a movie star, but as a curious wanderer drawn to forgotten places between film shoots. A local historian had mentioned the conservatory's mysterious past in passing, a story about a musical prodigy and a night that never happened. It intrigued Adam more than he expected. He pushed open the creaking gate, its groan echoing in the empty air, and stepped onto the moss-covered path. Inside, dust danced through the filtered light that cut across cracked windows. The once grand foyer held a collapsed chandelier, its crystals scattered like frozen tears. Faded recital posters still clung to the peeling walls, dates from the 1960s, names half erased by mildew. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft scuff of his boots against the tiled floor. He moved room to room, absorbing the decay. Splintered benches, forgotten sheet music, splashes of mold creeping up once white walls. In one practice room, he found a chalkboard with a child's careful cursive still faintly visible. Believe in your sound. But it was in the auditorium where time truly stood still. The rows of red velvet seats, faded and moth-eaten, faced a stage cloaked in shadows. Curtains hung in tatters. As Adam stepped onto the stage, the wooden floor creaked in protest. He could almost hear the hum of tuning instruments, the murmur of an audience that never came. At the far edge of the stage, behind a toppled music stand, something caught his eye. It was a violin case, its leather cracked, the clasp barely holding. He knelt and gently opened it. Inside lay a broken violin, its neck split, the strings long snapped. A silk handkerchief lay tucked beneath it, embroidered with the initials LW. He turned it over and found a small photo, yellowed with age, a young girl in a recital dress, holding the same violin, smiling wide with hopeful eyes. The back read only, "Lucien, age 12, our shining star." A chill ran through him, not from the poem, but from the weight of the silence surrounding that single image. The auditorium was supposed to be her moment, but it had never happened. No program listed her name. No review, no article, no trace. She had vanished before her debut, and no one seemed to remember her. Adam stared at the broken violin, haunted by the sense that this wasn't just an abandoned instrument. It was a message frozen in time. Someone once waited here with hope. Someone never got to play their song. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt like he'd been meant to find it. The following morning, rain tapped softly against the windows of Adam Driver's rented flat, the broken violin now resting carefully on a nearby table. The photo of Lucienne lay beside it, her eyes frozen in a timeless joy that contrasted eerily with the silence surrounding her story. Adam hadn't been able to sleep. His mind spun in loops, circling the same questions. Who was she? Why had she disappeared? And why had no one spoken of her in decades? Determined, he returned to the local historical society, a modest building nestled between a florist and an old church. Inside, the librarian, a woman named Ruth, whose white hair was pinned into a neat bun, watched him curiously as he approached the desk carrying the photo and violin handkerchief. "I'm looking for anything you might have on a student named Lucienne Wexley." She would have been 12 around 1963, maybe connected to the Wexley Conservatory? Ruth's eyes widened slightly at the name. Wexley. That was the name of the founder, Arthur Wexley. He opened the conservatory for underprivileged students. Musical prodigies, most of them. But it shut down abruptly in '63. There was an incident. Adam leaned in. What kind of incident? She hesitated, then gestured for him to follow. They walked into the archives room, dimly lit, filled with the smell of old paper and damp wood. Ruth dug through a cabinet and pulled out a brittle folder marked Wexley Conservatory, 1963. Inside were faded news clippings, handwritten notes, and a recital program. One page caught Adam's attention immediately. It listed the lineup for a spring recital. Violin solo, Lucienne Wexley. She was Arthur's daughter, Ruth said softly, glancing over his shoulder. The prodigy. They said she was unlike anything anyone had heard, but the night of her debut, she vanished. Adam turned to her. Vanished? Disappeared before stepping on stage. Police searched for days, but they found nothing. No body, no clues. Arthur was devastated. Some thought she ran away. Others whispered about darker things. She looked down, her voice lowering. There were rumors that she had wanted to quit, that her father pushed her too hard. One night, he locked himself in the lighthouse near the lake. He was never seen again. Adam felt his heart thudding. Lighthouse, Ruth nodded. They say Arthur used to take Lucienne there to practice, to escape the pressures of the academy. It's abandoned now, just like the conservatory. Adam thanked her and left with copies of the files in hand. Hours later, beneath a gray sky, he stood before the lighthouse. It was narrow and tall, its white paint chipped and rusted at the edges. Weeds wrapped around its base like warning signs. The door creaked open with effort, revealing a spiral staircase leading into silence. At the top, he found a circular room lined with glass panes, some shattered, letting in the soft whisper of the wind. In the center sat a wooden stool and music stand, untouched by time. Sheet music, faded and torn, still clung to the stand. He reached for it gently. It was a handwritten score titled Unfinished Light, and it bore the same delicate cursive from the chalkboard in the conservatory. Believe in your sound. Suddenly, a strange sound pulled him from the moment. A faint note, almost like a single key pressed on a distant piano. He froze, listening. It came again. Not from the lighthouse, but from the lake below. Adam raced down the staircase, his boots thudding against the iron steps. Outside, fog was thick over the lake, curling like breath in the air. And there, barely visible through the mist, was a half-submerged wooden dock. At its edge sat something half-hidden beneath the surface. He approached cautiously, water lapping at his boots, and saw it. A grand piano, rotted by water and time, its keys peeking just above the surface like a mouth waiting to sing. Near it, tangled in roots and reeds, was another object, wrapped tightly in canvas and tied with a red ribbon. Heart pounding, Adam pulled it free. It was another box. Inside, more sheet music, a pair of ballet slippers, and a final letter, signed in looping cursive. For whoever finds this, know that I played, even if no one heard. Lucienne. Adam held the letter tightly, rain now falling in earnest, mixing with the tears he hadn't realized were sliding down his face. The silence had begun to speak. Lucienne's voice had waited, not for applause, but for someone who would listen. The fog over the lake hadn't lifted. It clung to the earth like memory, persistent, refusing to fade. Adam Driver stood at the edge of the water, Lucienne's final letter still in his hand. The warped grand piano remained half-submerged like a ghost refusing to sink. In that moment, the lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a grave, a diary, and a stage left waiting far too long. Back in town, Adam took the violin to a professional restorer. The woman, a retired luthier named Simone, examined the instrument with reverence. "This isn't just a violin," she murmured, running her fingers gently over the splintered wood. "This was made by hand, by someone who loved her." She looked at him. "I can fix it, but it'll take time." Adam nodded, then unrolled Lucienne's sheet music across her table. Page after page, they told a story, not with words, but with crescendos, tremolos, and melancholic pauses. A suite in 3 parts: hope, silence, return. Over the next few days, he threw himself into research. He met with local historians, surviving relatives, and even a former student of the Wexley Conservatory, now a man in his 70s, who remembered Lucienne as the girl who could place sorrow into sunlight. He recounted how Arthur Wexley had once said, "My daughter doesn't play music, she speaks to time." Adam uncovered details that had been buried in rumor. Lucienne had planned to leave the conservatory. Her mother had arranged for her to attend a music school abroad, something Arthur disapproved of. The night of the recital, an argument had erupted. She never showed. The official story claimed she'd run away. But the diary Adam had found, its pages still drying by his windowsill, told a different truth. Lucienne had gone to the lighthouse that night, desperate for peace. She'd carried her violin, her sheet music, and her sorrow. The storm that struck the coast that evening was violent, unexpected. The dock collapsed. The piano was pulled into the lake. So was she. It was never a disappearance. It was a drowning. And Arthur, crippled by guilt, had returned to the lighthouse daily. Until one night, he too vanished. Locals believed he wandered into the storm, chasing her music. Adam decided the story needed to be finished, not in words, but through sound. He organized a small gathering in the ruins of the conservatory, now cleaned up and filled with the scent of candles and old wood. Guests included local residents, former students, and a handful of young musicians. At the center of the stage sat a lone chair and the restored violin, glistening under the soft lights. Simone had worked a miracle. Adam stood at the front of the room, holding Lucienne's letter. "Tonight," he said softly, "we play for someone who was never heard. A voice silenced by time but never truly lost. This is for Lucienne Wexley and the unfinished light she left behind." A young violinist stepped forward. She had Lucienne's spirit in her eyes. And then, the first note, it was trembling, uncertain, like a whisper waking from sleep. But soon it grew. The composition soared. The movements told a story of a young girl dreaming by a lake, the weight of expectation, the silence of a piano submerged beneath fog. But more than anything, it was about returning, about being remembered. As the final note lingered in the air, a hush fell over the crowd. Not one person moved. Some wept quietly. Others closed their eyes, letting the music echo within them. Adam looked toward the old conservatory walls, where light filtered through cracked windows, and imagined her there, standing barefoot with her violin, finally seen, finally heard. That night, the lake was still, but something had changed, not the world, but a wound within it, closed. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Each tale we tell honors forgotten voices and untold memories, just like Lucien's. Comment below. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Hit the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the stories that time almost left behind.